Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of the Four and Fork Social Distancing Cooking Show. I am excited to have you all here. If you haven't been watching the first two episodes of doing these live streams from home, I will tell you right now that normally I have about one day out of the month where I have some people come visit my house, we make some food, we film it, and then we have YouTube videos for the whole month, but social distancing. So instead, I'm going live from my kitchen, and I'm going to be showing you how to make delicious fudgy brownies today. So I'm going to wait a minute and let some people join. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, please, so that I can know. These brownies, I'm really excited about them because I realized that as a food blogger, I've been a food blogger for almost 2 years, and I haven't had a brownie recipe on my website yet. I've never even, before making this recipe, I had never even made homemade brownies before. So I realized after a while that I needed to have a homemade brownie recipe on my website. And so it took a couple of tries for me to get these fudgy brownies right, but they are delicious and I love them. And I am so excited to share the recipe with you. All right, I think we can get started. So we're going to start with a mixing bowl. That's how baking usually starts. Here we go. We have our mixing bowl. And I'm going to start with 8 tablespoons, 8 tablespoons of melted butter. So I use unsalted butter. When you're baking, you always want to use unsalted butter because when you have salt is really vital to baking, and when you have salt already in your butter, it's really hard to manage how much butter is actually in your baking recipe. So I always use unsalted butter when I'm baking because that way I can manage the saltiness of my dish my own way instead of relying on the unknown amount of salt that's in the stick of butter. So I have 8 tablespoons of melted butter, and I also have half cup of brown sugar, and then 3/4 cup of granulated sugar. So I'm going to put those into my butter all at once, and then I'm going to use my mixing electric hand mixer, and I'm going to mix it up until all of the butter and the sugars are combined. Hi! So, oh, there you go. I saw your thumbs up. You can hear me now. That's good. All right, so beat that butter and sugar together. Okay, so Matt asks, why do I use brown sugar? That's actually a good question because a lot of brownie recipes don't have brown sugar, or if they do have brown sugar, they have just a little bit of brown sugar. I use brown sugar in my brownie recipe because I love brown sugar in the way that it tastes when it's baked. So the brown sugar in this recipe, when you cook the brown sugar, it starts to have more of like a molassesy, syrupy kind of taste, and just a hint of it, just a little bit, but it tastes a little bit kind of more mapley in the brownies. Plus, the texture of the brown sugar makes the brownies a lot fudgier and chewier than traditional brownies. So that's why I use brown sugar, and I think that's like the secret to the brownie recipe. Okay, so I creamed my butter and my sugars together, and now I'm going to add 2 eggs. So I have this little secret trash can down here right underneath my counter, so I can just throw my eggshells right away. Isn't that fancy? Now crack both eggs in here, and then I also have some vanilla. So I'm going to put my vanilla in here as well. Okay, now I'm going to beat it again. So when you're beating eggs and you're baking, unless the recipe specifies to beat the eggs for a certain period of time, you only want to beat the eggs until just combined, because the longer you beat the eggs, the stiffer they're going to get and the tougher your baked good is going to be at the end. So I mix these eggs just long enough to combine them into the batter, but no longer because I don't want my brownies to be too stiff. All right. What kind of brown sugar is preferable, light or dark? Oh, that's a good question. Thanks for asking that. So I used dark brown sugar in this. I like again, the molasses-y taste. But if you only have light brown sugar, it'll work, but I like to use dark brown sugar right now. Okay, I have 8 ounces of chocolate chips here in this glass bowl. You can use chocolate chips if you want to. That's normally what I use. But if you also have baker's chocolate or like a chocolate bar or something like that, as long as you have 8 ounces, you can cut it up and use that for your brownies as well. But it's going to need to be melted because we need to make this a nice chocolatey dessert. So you have to melt your chocolate. So what you're going to do is put it in a microwavable safe glass bowl, microwave for about 25 seconds, stir it, microwave again for 25 seconds, stir it, and then microwave again. And by the 3rd time around, in between 20 and 25 seconds, the 3rd time, you will have melted chocolate. So I'm going to put these in the microwave. And we're going to walk through this process together so that you guys can see how it should look at each stage and make sure that you're not burning your chocolate. So back up, you can see my nose over here. Okay, so yes, if you microwave them all for the entire length of time, so about 1.5 minutes, if you microwave it in one stretch of 1.5 minutes, your chocolate's going to burn. So that's why we microwave it for a little bit, mix it, microwave it again, mix it, etc. So we've just done our first pass of microwaving, and if you mix the chocolate chips, not a lot is going to happen. It's just going to look like, let's see, can you see right here? It's just going to look like chocolate chips that are a teeny tiny bit melty. Mix them up anyway, just to make sure that you break up what's touching the glass and what's in the middle. And I'll put it back in. Okay, I put it in for another 25 seconds. Does anybody have any questions right now or anything while we're waiting for that to cook? I know we already talked about the brown sugar a little bit, so that's definitely the most unique part of this recipe is the brown sugar. So I'm glad that we got to cover that topic too. 5 more seconds. Go over here and go. All right. We'll stir it up again, and now you can see, I don't know if you can see this very well. Lift it up there. So you can see that there's still some chocolate chip shapes in there, but it's not completely melted, but it's really starting to get there. So our last pass of 25 seconds is really what's gonna melt the chocolate all the way. So in case would it be okay to not melt the chocolate chips beforehand? So you can make the brownies with chocolate chips in them. However, in order to make the brownie base, no matter what, you're gonna need to melt 8 ounces of chocolate and put them in. If afterwards you want to have chocolate chips in your brownies, you can add more full chocolate chips that you didn't melt, but you'll at least need to melt this so that you can make sure that your brownies are chocolate. If you don't do this, they would be blondies, which I actually kind of want to make blondies on my website too. Blondies are non-chocolate brownies, so they're like vanilla flavored brownies. That's what would happen if you didn't melt it. All right, so now look at that. Beautifully melted chocolate. So now I'm going to use my rubber spatula and put the chocolate in here. Okay, so at this point, we're done using our electric mixer. And instead, we're just going to use the rubber spatula to mix it up. So we'll mix all this chocolate in until the batter turns beautifully chocolatey. Look at that, delicious. Can we use double boiler instead for melting chocolate? Yes, you totally can use a double boiler instead. Sometimes the concept of a double boiler is intimidating to people, so that's normally how I melt my chocolate. But if you don't want to microwave, you can absolutely use a double boiler. And for those that don't know, a double boiler is when you, let me show you what a double boiler is. This is nice because when I try to explain in the blog, it's kind of hard, but I can actually show you. So double boiler would be if you take this pot, you fill most of it with water, and then you take a glass bowl. This one's too small, but it would be a similar concept where it would fit and kind of sit on top of the pot a little bit like this. You would put the chocolate in the glass bowl and you would put the water in the pan, and then you heat the water that's in the pan till right below boiling. You don't want it to boil, but it'll be a little bit below boiling temperature. And while your glass bowl with the chocolate is sitting on top of that pretty hot water, the chocolate will start to melt, and you can mix it as it's melting. But again, sometimes that concept is intimidating, so I just went with the microwave. Okay, so we added the chocolate in there, and now we get to add the, I think I just got chocolate on my face, did I? No, we're good? Okay. And now I'm gonna add the flour and the cocoa powder. So I have 3/4 cups of flour that I'm gonna sift. Can I get it all in here without making a mess? I got most of it. 3/4 cups of flour. And then I also have 1/4 cup of cocoa powder that I'm gonna put into my sifter. There's a little, it won't come out. There we go. And then I'm gonna sift this into my bowl. So for those of you that aren't in school or aren't at work right now and don't have anybody to remind you, I will remind you that Mother's Day is tomorrow. So if you are looking for a nice little treat for after dinner for your mom, then this is a really good recipe to make. I'm making a mess over here. I'm splashing flour all over the place. Okay, so I mix that in a little bit, and then I also have a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Put that in there too. And that's pretty much it. I'm gonna mix this up until we get a brownie batter. I will tell you, for anybody that's making this recipe, if you've ever made boxed brownies before or normal homemade brownies, you might notice that this batter is a little bit different than what you get coming out of the box. That's because this batter is really thick batter because of the brown sugar that's. So it's going to be kind of a mix between cake batter and almost like, it should not be as thick as cookie dough, but it's in between cake batter and cookie dough. And that's going to be what gives us the really chewy, fudgy brownie texture. You can see this here. Let's see if I can show you. That's what it should look like. Delicious. Okay. I've preheated my oven to 350 degrees. And now I have an 8x8 glass dish and some nonstick cooking spray. So I'm going to spray my dish with cooking spray. Now all I'm going to do is pour this brownie batter into the pan. You're going to have to spread it around a little bit with your rubber spatula. Like I said, it's pretty thick. That's going to be delicious. See if I can scrape it all up. Okay. So let's move that. Now I'm just going to use my spatula to spread the brownie batter to the edges of the pan here. Okay, like I said, my oven is preheated to 350 degrees. So I'm going to go take this and put it into the oven. And there we go. I'm going to put it into the oven for about 40 minutes or so. If you use a ceramic dish, like I baked these in a ceramic dish the other day. The ceramic dish took a little bit longer. It took me about 50 minutes. So that's about the time that you're going to need to cook, is about 40 to 45 minutes, and that's to get the really fudginess of the brownies. If you are making the brownies and you're going to check if they're done, you can use the toothpick trick. Put the toothpick into the center of the brownies. When you pull it out, if it's a clean toothpick, then your brownies are done. I, however, like my baked goods, like my cookies and my brownies, tiny bit underbaked because I think it's so good. So instead, when I put the toothpick in, I wait for like a tiny bit of batter to come out with it, and then I say that it's done. Okay, so now we're going to do what we call in my household the Rachel Ray. So I already made, because we're not going to wait 45 minutes for these brownies to cook, but I wanted you to see what they look like when they're done. So I made a version of them yesterday. I baked them, and these are what they look like. Delicious, gooey. I'm going to go get a knife, and I'll cut a piece out for you. I might need a spatula too. So my favorite way to eat brownies is to microwave them and then have them gooey with ice cream. Let me go grab a spatula real quick too. Okay. So the good thing too about these brownies is that the edges are pretty firm. So if you're an edge person, you like firm edges, then you're going to get really firm edges. And if you're a middle person, you like a really gooey middle, then you're going to get a really gooey middle. And it's going to kind of please both types of people in your household. So here, I'll show you, or maybe I can show it this way too. There you go. That is the brownie. Gooey in the middle, nice crispy edges on the edge. Delicious. I am now going to experiment with another recipe that I'm going to put on the blog soon. So I'm not going to actually eat this brownie because coming soon, we're going to be having s'mores brownies for a nice summer treat around the bonfire. So I'm not going to eat this brownie so that I can experiment with the s'mores toppings, but keep an eye out for that to come up on the blog soon. The recipe for this can be found at www.foreignfork.com. And if you search Fudgy Brownies, you'll be able to find the recipe. All right, it was really fun hanging out with you guys. I'm so glad that I was able to make this and show you how to make these delicious fudgy brownies. And I will be live next week, same time, same place, Saturday, 1:30 Eastern Standard Time on Facebook and YouTube, making a delicious Croatian recipe of stuffed peppers. All right, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you guys soon.